Everyone. Starting to welcome everybody to our webinar today. I'm Sam LaPrade. Welcome to the CBI Capacity Building Institute. We get together here every month, and I'm so excited to welcome all of you. If you've joined us before, you know how much I love finding out where everybody's from. So I am in Ottawa. I'm on Anishinaabe, unceded and unsurrendered territory of the Algonquin people, and I appreciate everybody being here today. Let me know in the chat where you're coming from, and then I'm going to introduce our guest in a bit, and you're never going to believe where she's coming from. So we're going to have that happen in a few minutes, but we're just welcoming everybody in to our chat today. So looking forward to spending time with all of you. Great topic today. I'm very excited. I certainly need to know as much as I can about social media strategy. So Alicia Hancock is going to lead us in that chat in a little bit. I'm seeing lots of great people joining us today and some names I recognize. So if you want to pop in the chat where you're coming from, I would welcome that. Our program runs pretty smooth every month, which is always great. I'm just welcoming everybody here today, and then I'll turn it over to the wonderful Hannah Rockburn in a minute. And then we're going to come back and have a really solid discussion, as I mentioned, with Alicia Hancock and talk all about social media strategy. And then we'll have an opportunity to hear from you, which is another favorite part for me, is that we get lots of questions from all of you. So get thinking about all of those different ways that you can share maybe something that's happening in your organization, and having an opportunity to hear about some of your social media questions as well. So I look forward to all of that. We've got a couple people joining from Ottawa, which is wonderful in my neck of the woods. I'm going to turn it over to the wonderful Hannah Rockburn. She's the glue that keeps us all together. Hannah, are you there, my friend?
Hey, Sam, I am here.
Excellent. I'll come back in a minute. Hannah, take it away.
Perfect. Thanks so much. All right. So for those that may not know me, I am Hannah Rockburn, and I am the operations manager here for the Capacity Building Institute. So the Capacity Building Institute, we are a nonprofit organization under the umbrella of Sustainable Capacity Solutions, where we provide training and coaching and mentorship support to staff and volunteers in the environmental sector all across Canada. And our goal, our mission is to provide this equal opportunity and access to capacity building training for any and every small shop environmental leader across Canada. And we do this by focusing on 6 core capacity building themes, from financial management, governance, volunteering, communications, risk management, and leadership and organizational culture. We do run a variety of training programs. So we do have our capacity building webinar series, which is where you are right now. It's a free monthly webinar that we host every month from usually 4 to 5 p.m. Eastern, where you get to hear from a variety of different speakers and professionals in the field on the variety of different topics. We also have the Capacity Building Certificate Program. So this is a kind of 6-month boot camp for executive directors and senior program leaders to learn more about the higher level of your organization and running your organization. And then we have sort of a light version of that. We have the Youth Skills Development Training Program. And this is for youth between the ages of 18 and 30, where they're just looking to get into the nonprofit sector and kind of learning about it and getting those experiences. So we are running that program currently right now, and we have limited sponsored spots for up to 20 youth to take the training for free. So if there's any youth that are in Ontario, the Atlantic, or Northern regions in Canada, and you would like to help build your skill development and have some experience working or volunteering in the nonprofit sector in your area, please let us know and contact us. Later on, I will put in the application information in the chat for you guys that you can apply. And if you're an employer that is looking for volunteers or some extra help, or you have some people on staff that are youth that you would like to send them to training, you can also apply as an employer organization to participate in this program. We also have amazing lead trainers that help run these various programs. We have Sam that's here tonight. We also have Rob and Barb, Alex, and Dwayne that all have different levels of expertise and have had many years of experience working in the nonprofit sector to bring you the information that you need. And then we also just want to thank all of our supporters and funders. We have a variety of partners and programs that we run, and we would not be able to run them without our partnerships. Lastly, we always want you to contact us if you are looking for help or want to learn more. You can email us, you can contact us through our website. We have a phone number as well that you can call, and that would bring you to talk with me directly. And then we also have a couple dates for you to save in your calendars for the upcoming webinars for the rest of the year. Next month, we have Mary coming from Charity Village to talk about the top 3 HR career issues that nonprofits are facing. Then we will have a corporate funder panel coming in November to talk about corporate funding. And you can actually ask some of your questions directly to these funders and about how they do the granting and why they do what they do. And then in December, we will have a special panel with the BIPOC Fellowship Fellows and kind of on that topic of the importance of diverse leadership. So you'll get to hear from some BIPOC leaders within Canada and the projects that they're working on and their take on why it's important to have the diverse leadership in the sector. So with that, I will pass it back to Sam.
Beautifully done as always. Thank you so much, Hannah. I appreciate your time. It is my pleasure to welcome Alicia Hancock. Alicia, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an absolute pleasure.
It is wonderful to have you. Now, I've kind of teased everybody because I want everyone to know where you're coming from. You have gotten up very early in the morning. It is 6 o'clock your time. Where are you joining us from, Alicia?
I am joining you from Perth, Western Australia.
Western Australia, beautiful, beautiful. So glad you're here. We've got people joining us from all over Canada, including Alberta and BC, Ontario, and my good friend Alison Telford's joining as well. She's a wonderful advocate here in Ottawa. So it's wonderful to have so many people joining today. We're going to talk about social media strategy. And I think many of us in the nonprofit sector really kind of struggle with this, but I want to know a little bit. Tell me a little bit about what you do and how you came to be an expert.
Yeah, I have to say I don't love the word expert because I think social media is so diverse and so big. It's impossible to be an expert in all of it. I guess what my expertise is social media strategy for nonprofits specifically. But was really sort of fell into this space as a lot of people did. I was a journalist and a magazine editor for a long time, so my background's telling powerful stories. And then I found myself when social media first started taking off for companies, I was just founding my company, and so many people kept coming to me going, what do I do with this Facebook thing? And how do I set up a page? So I was really on that early edge of social media development. And I've been able to build those skills right from those sort of early days. Started specializing in nonprofits about 10 years ago now and never looked back. I love the impact that the nonprofit sector has, particularly on digital media. So I've been doing that for quite a long time now and worked with organizations all over the world. From teeny tiny nonprofits right through to really big international companies like Habitat for Humanity or World Vision and large organizations, the Red Cross.
Wow. And it really is like, to your point about the comment about being an expert, things evolve all the time and it's hard to keep up, right?
It's really true, especially for nonprofits. I think sometimes it is an impossible amount of pressure because as a comms person, you're often, social media is just one part of your responsibilities. And then you're trying to keep up with multiple platforms and new trends. So I sort of see my job as being the person who gets to nerd out on all things storytelling, social media and digital marketing, and then just pick out the parts that are relevant to nonprofits and
Mhm.
share that with the community, which is what I love to do.
For sure. When we think about a strategy, and whether it's communication strategy, a fundraising strategy, social media strategy, we sort of want to kind of parcel it out and make sure we have all of the elements covered. Sort of what are the main headings, if you will, for social media strategy?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, there's quite a lot of different things you need to think about, but I'm a big fan of making it simple. But I always go back to the beginning. I think there's too many nonprofits that are using social media, just because it's a box you've got to tick. I've got to post to
Mhm.
this channel and this channel, and we're not thinking strategically enough. Therefore, we're throwing spaghetti at the wall and hoping something sticks. And
Mhm.
there's no real strategy and thought. So I always start with rewinding the strategy back to kind of what I call the discovery phase. And in that, it's really understanding, well, what are the goals? And so many people tell me, oh, my Facebook's not really working, or this isn't really successful. And I'm like, okay, well, what does success look like? And they can't always articulate that. So it's not going to magically deliver donations or volunteers or users of your service if you don't have a really clear strategic plan. So the
Mhm.
first point is always to clarify your goals. What does success actually look like? I always tell people, like, in 12 months time, if you look back and said our social media was wildly successful, what does that mean? What has
Mhm.
changed? And that's a really good way to clarify that. So that's certainly where I start. The next thing I always look at is the ideal audience avatars, because the reality is it's not like shaking a tin in front of a supermarket anymore.
Mhm.
Social media is actually quite specific to different audiences and specific in their needs. We have to get really, really clear who is the avatar or the ideal avatar that we want to speak to on each of our channels. So I think it's really important to spend time to really get to know that person, and not just demographics, but psychographics about them as well. So really have a profile, give them a name and a face, and be able to talk about that person as if they're a real person, because then we know who we're trying to actually motivate towards our goals. So that is a really important part of that process. The third thing I then look at would be definitely the platform. So where are we actually communicating on now? Do we have the right channels or the wrong channels? From there, I would move into storytelling. And I think it's really important to have one clear, cohesive message that goes through all your marketing, all your organization. And it's amazing how often that's not the case.
Mhm.
LinkedIn's different from Facebook, which is different from your website, which is different to the storytelling on your email marketing. So really bringing that back to a clear story. From there, I break that down into key messages to share, content pillars you can use. And then from there, we get into more tactical. So, okay, for your website, what is the, different stages of your funnel? Who's coming there? What are your tactics? Same with email, same with Facebook, same with LinkedIn, same with TikTok, like any channels you have in your digital suite,
Mhm.
making sure they're all starting to align. So that's probably the nuts and bolts of a broad level of a strategy and what I would
Yeah.
want to see in there. And I think that gives people a really good guide to be able to quickly refer to every time you sit down to do your social media and go, okay, right, this is what I'm actually trying to achieve. This is who
Mhm.
I'm talking to. This is the story we need to tell. And that really helps frame our brains up to succeed when we go to create social media content.
Because I think, to your point earlier, I think people think they've got to be on all the channels. But the reality
Yeah.
is it really depends on your audience, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I always say to nonprofits, you're better off doing, one or two platforms really well than
Mhm.
doing five or six poorly. And unfortunately, that's what a lot of nonprofits end up doing. And that's because there's pressure on our comms people from the board, from management. Oh, X is really great, or, Threads, we should be on there. And
Mhm.
unfortunately, that's just because we feel like we need to be everywhere and we need to be doing everything really well in this space. But all we do is we spread ourselves too thin,
Mhm.
and we end up doing them all pretty poorly. So I'd always say the more you can understand your goals and audience, the more effectively you can choose the social platform that is going to give you the most bang for your buck, the best outcome for the amount of time you can put into it. And it's always better to get that working really, really well before you go and add extra platforms.
Yeah, no, fair enough. And when you think about organizations that have a strategic plan, that business plan, that, that sort of way forward, whether it be a fundraising plan. Are you finding the social media plans align, or do they kind of look maybe sometimes like they're from different organizations?
Usually before they meet me, they look from different organizations. Oddly enough, sometimes our marketing comms people or the people responsible for the social can get a little bit siloed to the side, where it's like, yeah, I've just got to pump out content, and people send them disparate things on email going, we need to share this, without a lot of plans. So they kind of operate in their own little bubble over here. So one of the first things I do with the strategy development is, when we do that goal setting, is to bring it back to the organizational leadership and have those conversations like, okay, well, what are the strategic goals for the organization the next year? There's no point us sitting around here focusing on this tiny thing if it's actually like this big problem over here. And a perfect example of that is, I worked with a very well-known animal rescue charity. And this disparate thing, it was such a good example, is someone in their team reached out to the marketing team and said, oh, we're desperate, we need blankets and towels and things for the animals, and we really need to help them. So the social media person was like, right, okay, I can do this, mobilized the whole army of their community on social media to give all this stuff. And it was a great success. But then, like 2 weeks later, the CEO's like, okay, now we need to do our big annual fundraiser where we need to raise $2 million. And it fell flat because the community feels like they've just done their giving. They've just given them everything they needed. They've just done that. They don't want to support them again. So by asking for towels and blankets, they sabotaged their $2 million fundraising goal, because there just wasn't that communication between what was most important for the organization and, what was being communicated at the right time.
Wow, such a good example of something that seems like the right direction at the time, but not seeing the big picture, right? Yeah, brilliant, brilliant. What are some of those common mistakes that we make? And you probably checked out my social media to find out what mistakes I've made, but because I've made a lot. But what are those mistakes that you see that are sort of reoccurring with nonprofits?
The first one is definitely being spread too thin, which we already touched on. So not having enough resource or time to do something properly. So trying to be everywhere. And no matter how good you are, I've been doing this for 15 years. I couldn't run, 5 or 6 channels at the same time and be multitasking across other jobs. It's just not possible, no matter how good you are. So it's not a failing. It's just being realistic about what's possible with your time. I think the other one is not having a clear audience. Sometimes we naturally fall into this sense that we need to be for everyone and we need to talk to everyone. Another example of this is, a good friend of mine is terrified of birds. Like, she has this petrifying fear of birds. She will literally throw herself to the ground to avoid a bird flying too close. It's something the rest of us aren't super aware of, but I always use it as an example, because I think, if someone knocked on her door tomorrow and asked for a donation to save the rare, red-crested cockatoos, she's going to say no, because she has no affiliation or connection to that. So if you're wasting time trying to market to someone like Jessie with your fundraising campaign or your message, you're literally like banging someone over the head who you're never going to be able to convert. There's just no way. So I think that's really important part of our audience targeting, is going, who is our ideal person we want to attract? Because the reality is, we don't really want everyone. Even if we think about volunteering, I'm sure all of you that have volunteers could imagine 1 or 2 people in your organization that you thought, if I could clone that person 100 times, wow, just imagine what we'd be capable of. Whereas on the other side, there might be other volunteers that go, if we had 100 of them, you might roll your eyes and go, oh, that would be just so much work, because they're just harder and they need a lot more management. So we always do have these ideal avatars versus the people we're attracting. So what we want to really hone in is, who is the perfect person to volunteer? Who is our perfect donor that's going to give regularly and bigger amounts and for longer times, or whatever it might be? That's who we really want to speak to. So that's a common mistake, not having clear audience. And then just our content becomes so generic. It doesn't really connect emotionally with anyone. And we need emotional connections, particularly around donations, particularly around volunteering, because we do those things for emotional based reasons. We also find that a lot of channels don't give people enough value. We focus too much on what do we need to achieve. We need X donations. We need this many
Right.
people using our service, whatever it might be, or adopting this many jobs. That sometimes we forget that it's social media. Like, people are following you for a reason. They want to be part of a community. They want to get value from following you. So sometimes we forget that our content needs to be really balanced. It
Mm.
has to have that strong ask and call to action, but also has to have value and fun and community for our audience. And we
Mhm.
also need to have posts that are just about driving engagement and conversation, because that's what the platform algorithm loves. So if we're too one way or another, that's when we find we don't get engagement, we're not reaching people, and we probably just feel like we're shouting into the void a little bit.
And let me ask you, are you finding that nonprofits are raising money through social media, or is it to
Mm.
support the other asks, or is it a combination of both? Because I've sort of heard from different people, they're like, we can put out all the asks we want, we don't get very many donations, but yet they have a big following and they do well on their appeals when they go out through email or through direct mail.
Such a great comment. So what I would say with that is, the problem is not the social media. The problem is their strategy. They probably don't have one. It's probably not clear. So here's an example of that. So I worked with an organization called Pet Rescue. They had, what would it be now? It was a huge number of followers. So say like 130,000 followers on their
Wow.
Facebook page. And they had this engaged community, but they said something really similar to me. They're like, oh, but we can't use it to get donations. And I'm like, I don't understand that at all. They needed to raise $50,000 to do a project to revamp their fundraising website and their donation methodology. And to me, I'm like, that's so obvious. We've got 130,000 loyal people on your
Mhm.
social media. That's like 30 cents a person is all we need to get that across the line. And they're like, oh, we just don't do that with our audience. So all we had to do is put that strategy in place and actually go out there and actively start converting that story to suit that donation audience, explain to them what we needed, nurture them over a little bit of time. And they actually raised $45,000 in about 2.5 weeks from that audience. So it wasn't that they couldn't raise money from the platform, they just didn't have the strategic planning in place to do it effectively. And particularly while we're talking about Facebook, Facebook has embedded donation tools. So you're very lucky in Canada that you have access to those. People in New Zealand don't, people in Australia do. But they're actually, you have the ability to run embedded posts with calls to action to donate. You can run live videos with scrolling donation buttons where people can be donating live while you're speaking. You can embed a donation sticker in your stories. There are so many opportunities to raise money. But when you sort of say, what can you do on social media? I think the important thing to step that back to is pretty much 80% of the world's population is now on social media. So
Mhm.
anything you can do with direct mail, anything you can do on a phone call, anything you can do by, walking up to people on the street, you can do on social media. It's just about finding where the people are who are going to use your service, who are going to buy your product, who are going to donate, volunteer, whatever the goal is. You just need to be really clear on what it is. You need to put that strategy and plan in place to tell that story in the right way to your audience, go where they are and connect with them.
Mhm.
It doesn't matter, they're still people, and it's just another place that they're spending their time. And the reality is, it's where we're spending a lot of time now. I mean, the average person spends, it's reaching over 20 hours now per month on Facebook, and it's 45 hours on something like TikTok. It's really huge how much time we spend on these platforms. And the reality is, a nonprofit, there's not anywhere else we can, for free, access that size audience on
Mhm.
a regular basis.
Yeah.
And that's the power.
And let me ask you, like, when I think about Facebook, I'm on
Mhm.
Facebook, but my daughter, who's 16, is not on Facebook. She's on, TikTok and Instagram and things like that. When I think about the question I get always when I'm fundraising, how can we get that young audience? And the reality is, from what we see, the young audience doesn't have the disposable income to be able to donate the way we need. So talk to me a little bit about what audience fits which is that the way it works for you? Is it sort of age based, or is it different for every organization?
Yeah, it definitely is a big piece of the strategy of once we define the goals and the avatars, then you can go, okay, where are those people? And it's the same conversation, whether it's offline marketing or online marketing. It doesn't matter if they're, your ideal audience is all going to the soccer and you're buying advertising at the, on the side of the field, or whether you're buying ads or sharing content on LinkedIn. It's about, where is my audience? And how do I get in front of them is the question that we're asking. But the age is really a big factor. We find that someone who's 16, it's not that they're not on Facebook. They do usually have a Facebook account. They just don't use it the same way someone my age would. Because for most people my age, it's the first platform we really had. We really embraced it. It's just part of daily life. So we use it in a really different way. Same with even something like Instagram. Someone my age, we use Instagram. We have a profile with our real name on it. That's our one account. That's how we interact with the world of Instagram. Whereas someone who's 19, the reality is they have 3 to 4 Instagram profiles. They have their real name, which is their public kind of profile. They have one with a nickname, which just their really closest friends know about. And then they have like 1 to 2 like hobby-based accounts. One might be cooking, one might be pets. And, that's how they interact with that world. So that's why it's really important to have this strategy, because if you're trying to talk to me on Instagram versus the younger person, our usage of the platform is really different. The parts we engage with is different. The type of content we want is different. You can't reach both those audiences the same way. So you're definitely right. A lot of it is analyzing your audience. If you need to speak to people over the age of 55, Facebook, hands down. If we want to get to young audiences, surprisingly, while TikTok is obviously the easiest option to get to our teens, as we get to late teens, early 20s, LinkedIn is huge. Pinterest is really growing in the younger audiences. So it's not about going with that gut instinct, oh, they're young, they're all going to just be on TikTok. A lot of people miss the fact that LinkedIn is huge with people just about to graduate uni because they're looking for jobs, or that Pinterest has really grown in popularity. So it's about looking at the actual data and not just gut instincting it, and actually having this plan where you really think about it and understand the different audiences. But absolutely, if anyone here has specific questions about platforms, that's definitely one of the factors. Who is your audience? Who are you trying to attract? Well, where are they spending the most time? And where is the highest number of those people? That's where I suggest you invest your time and effort a lot more.
Yeah, for sure. Alicia's got some great answers for us today, really learning a lot. I'm going to remind everybody that's on the call today, we've got people joining us, obviously all the way from the West, Regina and all the way to New Brunswick and everything in between. So it's great to have everybody here today. I do want to and remind you that you can submit your questions. I do want to ask a question myself regarding how to stand out, because I think, and when it comes to the kinds of content that people are sharing, it really is important to kind of understand what content people are craving. And you've got all the analytical tools as well to be able to say, this performed really well, but this didn't perform, right? So we can't ignore those analytics either.
I think they're really important. So as much as I'm a storyteller and a creative and a content person, I also believe there's a lot to learn from data and information. So whether it's the data, like I suggested, where you choose your platforms and you make those decisions, or whether it's the data of looking at what's working for your audience and what's not, because sometimes it surprises us when we dig into that. But in terms of how to stand out, I always think the biggest opportunity for nonprofits, and the ones that we undersell a lot, is the fact that we have these genuine, powerful, authentic stories to tell. And we often make this mistake of trying to be really professional on social media. We put out this perfect polished image where we show all our best things, and we get corporate and we get professional, and we're like, yeah, that's our job on social media, to make our organization look amazing. I just like to challenge that thinking a little bit, because who is somebody going to support in the nonprofit space? The organization that looks polished and perfect and like they're already killing it and doing really well, and don't seem to need support, or the one that's honestly and vulnerable, sharing their story and their struggles and the things that aren't going so well, because we want to support them more. So we need to remember to tell that really authentic, transparent, and vulnerable story, to be a lot more human with people. If you're bored, if your executive are telling you be corporate, be professional, I'm sorry, it's 2024, that just does not work anymore, particularly post-pandemic. People want transparency and honesty and vulnerability. And the beautiful thing is, as nonprofits, we have that in spades. Just look at other brands like McDonald's. They manufacture these kind of stories artificially to create this emotional connection. So I'm assuming in Canada you have the Happy Meal.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So the Happy Meal. So just think about those words, the Happy Meal. Why do they call it that instead of just what every other burger chain does, the kids' burger meal? Well, they call it a Happy Meal because there's a whole story that goes behind that, if you're, as a parent, meal times are hard and keeping your kids entertained is difficult. You go to McDonald's and buy a Happy Meal, you don't have to cook tonight. You don't have to have stress. You don't have to fight with your kids tonight about what they're going to eat. Your kid's going to be happy. They get a toy, they get their meal. So they've constructed this emotional story around buying processed burger and fries or chicken nuggets or whatever it might be. But as nonprofits, we started our organizations. They exist because of our purpose, because of our story. So I always think in terms of how do we stand out, it's not about knowing how to do reels or the latest TikTok challenge or being the most technical person on social media. I think if I had to pick the one thing, it would be that raw, vulnerable storytelling. Get better at telling your story, being honest, open. Don't just create posts of moments in time of things that have happened. Tell a compelling story of a time so people know where you're going, why you're going there, what you value, and what you're struggling with, and where you need help. And talk to people like real people. And just that transformation alone will make you stand out so much more on the platform, because people do engage with genuine storytelling more than they'll engage with anything else.
Yeah, beautifully said. I remember during the pandemic, an organization that deals a lot with family mental health, they were putting out these little snippets giving people sort of parenting advice. And it was done in a way where it was like, I'm a mom and I'm hiding in my walk-in closet because I need 5 minutes to myself. And I was like, that is so smart. I thought it was so brilliant because it was very, very real, right? Everybody was going through that. So I thought that was really well done.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And there was even a whole bunch of research that showed that organizations during the pandemic that shared with people how they were supporting their staff and their team during that time, and exactly what they were doing and how the managers were struggling and the things they were dealing with, they actually grew, whereas organizations who still tried to be professional and perfect were all the ones that started to struggle. So there was a lot of research about the fact that we connect that way. And then if you get into the world of fundraising and volunteer recruitment, we know that emotional connection is vital before somebody will donate. So yeah, really important.
Yeah. And let's talk about that. So I love the time, talent, and treasure, the trifecta of philanthropy. So really attracting that, whether you're, and I see this locally here, people looking for new board members. So they're looking for that time and talent, or they're looking for somebody to work in the soup kitchen, or they're looking for those gifts, whether that be a monthly gift. So there are so many different ways to touch on all those ways of giving, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned before about the generational change about donations, and that's really true about how different generations give. So while, as you said, 17-year-olds may not have the disposable income to give money, we find that they're much more disposed to give time first. Then they are more likely to give an object, so the blanket or the donated tins. Then they're likely to transition to giving money to that organization over time. So if we're not giving them the opportunity to connect and volunteer and actually be part of it, they're not going to progress to become cash donors when they're able to. So each generation gives in really different ways. And as you said, sometimes, regular monthly giving, I often talk about this concept of, whales and sharks and minnows. Some organizations, we rely on, a couple of whales, big philanthropists, big corporate givers. And unfortunately, when we lose one of those, it really hurts a small organization. But sometimes we forget that, one whale can actually be replaced by 500 minnows. So you could have 500 people all donating $2 a month that actually, starts to hit the same amount of money that whale would give per year. So it's doing that kind of thinking as well, of going, well, it's not that we need, $200,000 from a donor. We need $200,000 from that category. We can do that from a lot of small givers as well. As long as they're regular and they're emotional and they're connected, they'll keep supporting it. So if anything, that has less risk, because we can afford to lose 10% of them without hurting us. We can't afford to lose 10% of our big givers.
I run up until a couple of months ago, I worked for 5 years for an organization that helped veterans. And we had a campaign every year. And we would go on social media and, for the remembrance period, which is the last Friday of October to November 11th, very important campaign for us. And during that time, especially during the pandemic, very controversial time, the legions were closed and people were very upset about that. So people would go on and complain about this. So then I would see all these beautiful messages, and then I would get all these really rude messages. How important is it that we keep up with that? Because I got to tell you, Alicia, I was up at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning trying to take down some of these messages, because they were impacting us. So how can we keep up with that pace and make sure that our brand isn't being targeted in a negative way, just trying to do some good for, in my case, it was for veterans?
Risk management is a really important part of strategy, and identifying which things are worth dealing with and which things are worth leaving. Because, we have a saying in social media space of don't feed the trolls. If it is people who are just having a complaint or having their opinion just because that's what they want to do, they just want to have their voice heard, there is no point trying to change that person's mind or engaging with them or interacting with them. It is going to go into a really negative space really quickly. But there's also really, positive ways to approach some of this risk management as well. And the one that immediately popped to mind, there's a brilliant organisation here in Australia called the Immunisation Foundation. And if anything creates controversy online, it's immunisation. And it's founded by a lovely woman called Catherine, who actually lost her baby, Riley, to whooping cough. And that's how she became a vaccination advocate. She ended up setting up this nonprofit. It's this amazing organization. But what they did is probably still to this day, I think one of the cleverest ways of dealing with that kind of negative risk is they had an army of people who were passionate supporters, but they were starting to get fairly broadly attacked by anti-vaxxers. So they actually created this entire program. They said for every negative comment on their page, they encouraged their advocates for every comment to buy one vaccination for a child in need. So they actually would publish the negative comments and encourage people who then were supportive to do, the vaccine might have been $2 or whatever it was. So suddenly when these anti-vaxxers realized every time they trolled or complained, somebody would buy a vaccination, that was really powerful in stopping a lot of that conversation. And I just thought it was such a clever approach.
Brilliant.
Because it wasn't about shutting down or deleting the negatives. It was about spinning it the other way and going, look, you're entitled to your opinion and all that's fine, but we're going to use that as our fundraiser. And they did, and it was so wildly successful.
Oh my
and now
God.
it means they don't have anywhere near that volume of negative. So not everybody can do something that sort of, I guess, clever, but the thing is, if you have a really engaged community and you have these passionate advocates, they will deal with a lot of that negativity for you. They will respond to it. They will comment, and you can stay out of some of those conversations, because at the end of the day, just going in and deleting them or dealing with that can be problematic. The other side is, if you're putting something out there in the world that is going to be open for discussion or disagreement, you just need to be prepared for that. You need to know how to respond in advance. You need to know what your strategy, which sort of posts will you remove if they're racist or sexist or factually incorrect or in some way litigious, obviously the process is to remove those. But if they're just people complaining, well, maybe they have a genuine complaint and you need to listen to some of those feedback and get better. And other times, they're just trolls who are having their say. And I will often reply to people and say, thank you for voicing your opinion. And most people go, oh, I thought you'd be really angry about that. It's like,
Right.
well, you're entitled to your thoughts. So it's more about anticipating where that's going to happen and trying to think about it a little bit ahead of time. So you're not blindsided and you're not replying to this post when you're feeling emotional either, because,
True.
we are really attached to our causes and what we do, and we really believe in them. So it's really easy to get fired up and turn into a troll ourselves by going, how dare you say those terrible things about this wonderful organization. So we want to plan when we're calm.
100%, especially when you're in campaign, you're working so hard. And, it was like one year we raised, $1 million in 2 weeks and I was just exhausted. And I was like, why are people being so mean? So yeah, I totally get it. We have somebody joining us. Julian's joining us from Wellington, New Zealand. Just wanted to show you some love there. So they got up early too, just to see you, Alicia. So
I love that. It's amazing.
So we've got lots of questions. I want to know how, and encourage people to put their questions in the Q&A. We have a couple in there right now, but before we get to those, how do I keep up? How do I keep up with all the trends? Because it can be overwhelming, and I'm very much like squirrel, I'm off looking over here and I forget about the strategy. So how can we keep up with these trends?
It's not easy because things are evolving really quickly. It's not even easy for someone like me who's doing it for a living. That's what I'm constantly doing. So my first piece of advice is, find somebody you trust that gives good advice in this space. So you can, if you resonate with what I'm saying, you can follow me on social media, and I share the updates nonprofits need to know. So in some ways that helps you cut through the noise. The other thing is, I always think if in doubt, you always need to come back to your strategy. So it is so easy. I'm ADHD. I'm all about the squirrels. Like, I love getting excited by the new shiny thing.
Yeah.
But that's why I have my strategy document. I literally have my file sitting right here, and I have a physical copy. And if I go through this, the first pages are, these are your goals. These are your audience avatars. This is the story you're trying to tell. And I literally, no matter how good I am at this, every time I go to create content, I pull out the file and I go, these are my goals. This is my avatar. This is my story. This is what I'm doing on these platforms. And I keep bringing myself back to strategy, because that's always going to get a better outcome than chasing squirrels. And doing the most exciting thing and jumping on the latest CapCut trend or the trending music. I'm like, that stuff's all great strategies. Once you have once you have your strategy in place, you can lean into some of those tactics. But if you're not doing anything very well, you're not getting tangible return from your social media, forget the shiny things. Get really just good at telling this emotional story over and over, reinforcing the message, engaging your audience. That's first. Forget the shiny things. And then once you've got that right and you've got the community who are taking action, then you can start going, okay, we can optimize our Instagram because Reels are working really well right now. So we're going to work on more Reels. We're going to create more carousels because they get multiple hits in the feed. You can start playing with those shiny things. But until that point, authentic, vulnerable storytelling with a strategic plan, with clear goals, clear audiences, and a clear story will win every single time. So try to ignore the shiny things, just do a few things really, really well is my best advice to start with. And then, follow someone that you trust or get some training or support. I mean, I have something called the Training Vault, which is a small monthly fee, but I have all my short courses, all designed for nonprofits across all the platforms, across the channels. Dig up somebody that you feel really confident with their information, and or start following other channels you really like what they're doing, and then just follow those patterns and instances yourself. So don't feel like you need to be across everything, because you'll drive yourself around the twist trying to do that. It just,
for sure.
It just doesn't
And to
work.
your point, being on 6 things, not well, but being on 2 and doing those really well. I love LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Like, I think LinkedIn, I just feel like it's got some decorum still. Like, there's some pleasantries. Like, people are not, so rude on LinkedIn, I find, because I think it's all business connections. So I really love, leaning into LinkedIn myself. But So
Yeah,
we
LinkedIn is personally my love language, I have to say, in this
love
space.
language. I like
I'm
that.
definitely got my biggest space is LinkedIn for sure.
Okay, well, I'm going to show you some love later and I'll join you on LinkedIn. Yeah, I'd love that. So we've got a question. I want to make sure I'm saying your name right. I think it's Aditi Tu. So is more better? The question is more better with social media? How often should you be posting to maximize engagement? This is the question we all need today. That's a great question.
Yes, great question, Aditi. It's not. More is not better anymore. If you'd asked me this question 5 years ago, I would have said Facebook recommends the optimal number of posts is 7 posts a day. That's what they were saying, 7 posts a day. It was a volume game. It was an attention game. It is not now because these platforms are crowded. There is so much noise. So you are better off posting less often on less platforms, but being very strategic with what you're creating. You'll get far better outcomes. So, most of my clients that are getting donations, selling products, attracting volunteers, getting really tangible results from their socials are posting 2 to 3 times a week on their platforms. So that's on their main kind of feed. They might be doing some stories and behind the scenes stuff in between, but I would much rather you post quality over quantity now. The other key word is consistency. So it's not about the volume, it's about being consistent. So don't go, I'm going to post 7 times this week and then ghost for 2 weeks and not post anything and then go 7 times, because we can do that in this space because we have ebbs and flows. Instead, plan in advance, use the scheduling tools, spread your content out. But yeah, 2 or 3 really high quality posts that take people on a journey, that has a balance of your story, that tells your story effectively over time and really is for that ideal audience. And against that goal, that's the sweet spot. That is where you're going to get much better outcomes. So yeah,
Great,
quality over quantity.
I love it. Great, great question. Ken Hopkins is asking a great questions as well. He's coming in from beautiful New Brunswick. I just visited there recently. Here's his question. I have had some dynamic results in the community advocating via social media and that it is important in the nonprofit sector. However, there seems to be some negative notions towards overbearing activism. How can I have an impact on fundraising, and how best can it be recognized to mitigate loss and exercise damage control? There's a lot in there. Yeah, it's great.
Quite a lot to unpack in that, Ken. And not to sound like a broken record, the first thing I come back to is strategy. You actually need to break all of these elements down into a clear plan so you can prioritize. Because the reality is sometimes there are goals that just don't sit alongside each other very well. So in one breath, you can't be, railing against the government and how unfair they are and how they don't support people with disabilities. And then the next moment try to apply for government grant funding. Like some of these things just don't naturally sit side by side. I'd say with advocacy is it really comes down to who's your audience. And there are times where the people who, like I have a rare autoimmune disease myself. So, if somebody had a channel where they were talking about the struggles and the challenges with that and how little research there is and that was advocating for me, like I would be all there for that. But that doesn't necessarily mean that platform and that conversation is the right place then to turn around and ask for donations. That might happen on a different channel or in a slightly different space. So sometimes that is the way we get around those multiple different needs is we might go, okay, X is our platform or Threads is our platform where we're advocating and we're reaching media and government, but Facebook is where we're nurturing our community and supporting people and when we ask for financial support. So we may have slightly different goals on different platforms. Sometimes that's the way to get around that. But otherwise, I'd say it really comes back to strategy. If you're struggling with all these different elements, you've got to come back to making those key decisions. What is success look like from social media? And if the number one thing is advocacy, then that's going to affect the effectiveness of fundraising. If the number one thing is raising the money, then we have to maybe look at different opportunities for advocacy and doing that in a different way that's not going to impact those channels as much. The other question I would say in that is just making sure you really understand your audience, because if your audience is really vocal advocates for you, they are also going to translate to passionate donors. So if you can get those right people and advocate to them in the right way, they should be relatively easy to convert to givers as well. So it's profiling those out, because your givers may be different to your advocates. Sometimes they're not. You need to understand what that looks like for you. So I would say you really need a good just strategy to spend the time to sit and think through these different questions. But fantastic question.
And there's a really good question. The next one, brace yourself. It's a really good one too. We find we have members saying they're not getting our information or seeing our feeds, even though they like or follow us. It's the A word. It's the algorithms. What's happening with the algorithms? How can they deal and have any tips with the Facebook algorithms?
Yeah, the hard challenge with that is every platform has different algorithms and different priorities. And understanding that is definitely one of the challenges of being in comms. It's one of the reasons I built something like the Training Vault, where I have, the algorithms for each platform and how to use them mapped out, because LinkedIn has a really unique algorithm called dwell time, which means if you write longer content and someone stops when scrolling through their feed and spends time hovering over it, the assumption is you're dwelling on the content, you're reading it, you're absorbing it, therefore it will show it to more people because your dwell time was high. That algorithm doesn't exist on the other platforms. It's just not a thing. So it's really difficult to know sometimes how to maximize that. But my simple, easiest tip to maximize the algorithm, because the reality is, if you're talking about Facebook, if 100 people follow your page, engagement rate is 0.002% for pages internationally right now, which means if 100 people like your page, or even 200 people like your page, not even one person's going to engage with you. It's just a numbers game. The reality is, a lot of nonprofits I work with are getting 15, 20% engagement rates, which are amazing. But the number one thing they do to get that is, aside from repeating strategy, it's making sure that some of your content is developed solely for the purpose of the algorithm. So 1 in 4 posts should be what I call conversation starters or engagement posts solely for the purpose of getting people to comment, like, share, save the post, depending on your platform, because every platform likes genuine engagement. So if you can get a lot of people having a conversation about something on your post, or reacting to your post, or feeling strongly about it in some way, that is always going to increase what we call your content quality score. That's where the algorithm goes, well, Julian's post is a 50 and Ken's post is a 10. Ken's post is going to be seen by 20% of the people that Julian's is, because his content quality score is lower. The best way you can improve that, understand your audience and talk about the things they care about, they're passionate about, and they want to talk about. They'll talk back to you, and that will improve your score. So your next post where you're promoting a product or asking for donations will then be seen by more people.
Brilliant.
That's how you improve your algorithm.
Brilliant. And is this asking questions? Like I follow somebody and they're like, oh, it's all about music. And so they're asking, like, is what song did you play? Do you remember dancing to when you were, in a teenager? And it's constantly seems to be asking questions.
That's one of the strategies. I often find, though, in the nonprofit space, if people think that's what it is, we start asking questions and then we get really discouraged because it's crickets. We post a question and nobody answers, or one person answers. So we get really despondent quite quickly. And that's because we are in this black hole of algorithm where we're only reaching a small number of people. People aren't seeing our posts because they're not engaging with them. So we disappear from their feed. That's just how it works. The platform's all about showing you what you want to see. So if your content's not high quality, it's not engaging, people will stop seeing it. And that's just the blunt reality of most of these platforms. So instead, like, a really good strategy, rather than asking a question, is posting something controversial. I worked with an organization that was about carbon neutral, and one of the posts that stand out for me is there was a piece of research out of, I think, Sweden, that said the number one thing you can do to reduce your carbon footprint is to have one less child. And what do you think? And people post it, and there was people going, yeah, cool, I'm all for that. Like, I've got 3. Can I drop one over to you? Like,
Yeah.
people had a bit of fun with it. Other
Yeah.
people were like, how dare you tell me, infringe my reproductive rights and tell me what I should and shouldn't do. And it started conversation. So controversial is always the easiest. I mean, the age-old social media post is coriander, yes or no. I don't know if you call it coriander there, but yeah, it's so polarizing. Either people love it or hate it.
Yeah.
Anything like that is your number one type of engagement post. But even just something as simple as like, hey, we're painting our office. Should we go blue or green? Or should we be doing this? Or what do you think of this thing we're doing? Or like just getting people involved in your day-to-day is the best, most valuable.
It reminds me of that picture of the shoe, and it was like, was it pink and gray, or was it blue and gray, or whatever? Remember that darn shoe that everybody was all in arms about?
There's a whole bunch of those. There was a dress that was metallic as well that went round, and people love that kind of stuff, and they will have their opinion and argue their point all day long. And I'm not saying you need to post the shoe or the dress or things like that unless you can find a way to make it relevant to your brand. But what is the number one thing that your audience loves to talk about? Do they love to talk about themselves, or do they get really fired up about this? If you can tap into that one thing they want to talk about, that's how you're going to get engagement and conversation. So whether it's being controversial or opinionated or whatever it might be, that's how you get people talking. And if people are talking to you, they feel you're real, they engage with you more. At the end of the day, the key to social media, if they know what you're trying to achieve as an organization and what you value, they create emotional connection. If you give them value, so you give the community lots of value, then they have a direct benefit for following you. They're going to be engaged. If you then start conversations and talk to them, they realize you are real human beings they can talk to, and they have a conversation, they create a bond. Then when you share your product or brand post where you ask for things or sell things or promote things, they are far more likely now to take action because of all those things that came before it.
Brilliant. We only have 4 minutes. I can't believe it. I mean, you can have your breakfast now. But I do want to ask you before, because a lot of people right now are thinking about Giving Tuesday. And there's really, talk about controversial. There's really 2 schools of thought in terms of Giving Tuesday. Some people say it's just too busy. We're not going to get any attention. And some people are saying, no, I'm going to get a matching gift, and, I'm going to put it out there on social media, and we're going to raise $20,000 in one day. How does Alicia Hancock feel about Giving Tuesday?
You're right. It comes down to what's right for your organization and who your audience is as well. So, some audiences, as you say, are quite cynical about it and don't engage with it, whereas a slightly older audience tends to see it as a really good opportunity to engage. I work with teeny tiny non-for-profits like Margot from Humans Helping Dogs, tiny not-for-profit started by one person, no background in not-for-profits. She did a Giving Tuesday campaign that raised only $15,000. And, that was a huge amount of money for such a small, tiny volunteer-based nonprofit. So it can be really, really effective. But I would always ask the questions against my strategic plan. For my audience, is Giving Tuesday something they're actively involved with or not? Is donations really, really important part of our goals and our priorities? If so, I would suggest it's something you try. And even if you really vulnerably and honestly share that story and go, hey, I know not everybody loves Giving Tuesday, but we actually really have this compelling need for donations right now to meet this need. So we thought we'd put it out there, like, would you like to support us this way? And give it a try and do a Giving Tuesday campaign once, but be honest and go, we know some people don't like this, but we think this, pressing need or problem is so important that we need to do it, and have that conversation. And it's either going to have some success or it's not. If it doesn't, then you go, well, maybe it's not right for our audience. If it does even have some success, then it's like, okay, if we do it a bit better next year, it could become quite a big staple for us.
Yeah, wonderful. Hannah, the wonderful Hannah, has put Alicia Hancock's resources and courses. The website there is free, so you want to grab that. This has been honestly an honor to spend time with you I learned so much, and really, I know our guests as well, and all the people participating today would have had an opportunity to up their game in terms of social media. So thank you so much for getting up at the crack of dawn with those birds and spending time with us from beautiful Australia today.
Thank you so much for having me. And I have to say, yeah, I was up before the birds. It was still dark and I could hear the birds waking up while we were talking.
Exactly.
But no, my
Exactly.
absolute pleasure. And thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to talk about something I'm really, really passionate about. And as I said, on that website, if you go to the free stuff section, there is heaps of free resources in there. So I'm passionate about helping nonprofits. I have a nonprofit social media handbook you can download. There's heaps of stuff in there you can check out. But I really love the fact that organizations like this, the Capacity Building Institute, are offering opportunities like this to nonprofits, because these are often things that they don't get access to. So a lot of nonprofits, you do struggle to learn this because you don't have big budgets. You can't necessarily afford to hire a consultant like me or do formal training. So training like this, organizations like you and the work you're doing is so critical for this space. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to support so many organizations this morning, and for providing this amazing education and support for our community, because we need more organizations who are willing to do that. So thank you, and thank you for having me.
Oh, it's been our pleasure, and thank you, Hannah, for making everything so smooth. And we're going to let Alicia go get her breakfast now, and we're all going to go have a nap. So, but thanks so much, everyone, for joining us. I'm Sam LaPrade. Until next month, remind us of the date. Wonderful, Hannah. Do you have the date off the top of your head?
I believe it is October 23rd.
October 23rd. We will be here, and look forward to seeing all of you. Thanks for attending, everybody. Take care.